What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Chris Low of ESPN outlined some of the biggest storylines for every SEC football team heading into spring practice. We'll run through some of those. Alabama sets a day for their spring game. Arkansas picks up a big-time player from Georgia, and much more. We'll go around the conference. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at lockedonsec.com. Well, let's dive right into it. We teased it. Chris Low of ESPN has put out his SEC spring preview with some of the top storylines as well as some newcomers to watch for each team. So let's dive right into it. And we will start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. His top storyline for the Tide, it's having a new OC in DC. Tommy Rees coming in to run the offense and Kevin Steele coming in to run the defense. And, of course, a lot of that focus on the offense is going to be on the quarterback spot, Ty Simpson versus Jalen Milroe. But a little bit deeper than that, Kevin Steele's got to find some playmakers to replace the likes of Will Anderson and others who are heading off to the NFL. And Dallas Turner, could be that guy to step into that role and really have a big impact on the defense. But, for Alabama, not only the new coordinators, but who are going to be some of the new playmakers that step up. Certainly something to keep an eye on. Chris Low's newcomer to watch at Alabama, wide receiver Malik Benson, coming in from the JUCO ranks as a transfer, has everything to fill a void as a deep vertical threat. So keep an eye on Malik Benson, wide receiver at Alabama. Over at Arkansas, Lowe says the top storyline for them is having a fifth-year senior quarterback, a KJ Jefferson back. Can he make big strides once again? And what's he going to look like with a new offensive coordinator in Dan Enos? How will he use Jefferson, who passed for 2,600 yards, ran for 640 yards a year ago? Williams looking to strengthen a group that finished 124th nationally a year ago. Well, the defensive coordinator he throws in here, Travis Williams, going to try to strengthen that defense. And to me, that is the bigger picture. Look, we know KJ Jefferson's going to be good. We expect Dan Enos to call good plays. But to me, the bigger storyline at Arkansas is how does Travis Williams fix that defense? That, like we were just saying, ranked 124th national a year ago in total defense, giving up almost, 464 yards a game. Absolutely ridiculous. But one of the guys who can help, Chris Lowell's newcomer to watch, Missouri transfer Trajan Jeffcoat, who comes in as a nice addition as a defensive end / pass rusher. Arkansas led the SEC with 42 sacks last year. So they'll transition from a three-man front to a 4-2-5 base. And Trajan Jeffcoat, a guy who can get after it, try to get some sacks for the Hogs. Next up, we got Auburn. Top storyline there. Of course, Hugh Freeze coming back to the SEC and being Auburn's new head coach and doing a fine job so far. But all eyes on that quarterback. Settling on a quarterback is going to be the main priority. And, of course, Robbie Ashford is in the driver's seat, started the last 9 games a year ago. And it seems like he's going to fit OC Philip Montgomery's system well with a heavy dose of run-pass option plays. So, to me, all eyes on the quarterback. But I would also say in the trenches, too. Auburn bringing in some new pieces on offensive and defensive line. Let's see how they adapt because, I think that could be a strength of theirs this year, whereas at times they lacked, particularly on the offensive side. Defensive side, of course, you lose Derek Hall and others. But a newcomer to watch, Kentucky D-line transfer Justin Rogers. So good on the interior of that D-line for Kentucky last year. Now he comes to Auburn, 6'3", 330 pounds. He can help make a difference on that D-line for Auburn. Next up, LSU. Top storyline for them. Look, they bring back a lot, particularly on the offense. You get back Jaden Daniels, blossomed a year ago. You got most of your offensive line back, wide receivers. But I'm keeping an eye on that defense. You're going to get Mason Smith back on the D-line. Remember, he got hurt in the first quarter of the Florida State opener last year and tore his ACL and didn't play the rest of the year. But to me, I'm keeping an eye on that secondary for LSU too. They got a lot of retooling to do there, and Chris Lowe throws in newcomer to watch for LSU, Texas A&M transfer DB Denver Harris, as well as Syracuse DB Darian Chestnut and Ohio State DB J.K. Johnson. All three of those guys, I mean, they got to find a way to, or they got to find roles for them. Who's cornerback one? Who's cornerback two? Who's the nickel back? Seems like all those guys will play some kind of role this year. Next up, we head over to Mississippi State, where obviously, look, they're still kind of picking up the pieces from the passing of Mike Leach just a couple of months ago. Of course, they coached the bowl game, and Coach Arnett has done a good job so far. But what's that offense going to look like? You bring back a great veteran quarterback in Will Rogers, already owns school records of over 10,600 passing yards, 82 touchdown passes. But you bring in OC Kevin Barbay, and the Bulldogs going to move away from that air raid offense and be a little bit more of a balanced offense with different groupings, motions, and shifts. Rogers probably not going to throw as much as he has the last 3 years, but Barbay already hit it off with a senior quarterback, and they will be heading down a different road offensively. It's going to be fascinating to see what that looks like. And another wrinkle, Chris Lowe says, newcomer to watch. I feel like this isn't being talked about enough. Vanderbilt transfer quarterback Mike Wright coming into Mississippi State. I think that, that's such an asset. They could put certain packages in there. He's got tremendous running ability, but he can throw as well. I think Mississippi State can get very creative on offense and use some packages with Mike Wright. Lowe also says safety Isaac Smith could be an early contributor as a freshman for State. Over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin and company. Look, there's only one storyline only for Ole Miss. It's who the hell's their quarterback? Jackson Dart was the Rebel starter last year, but they got a full quarterback room now, bringing in Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State, Walker Howard from LSU. Sanders, a 4-year starter, first team All Big 12 in 2021. Howard's a former 5-star recruit. It's a crowded quarterback room, and we should get some answers throughout the spring. Somebody should separate themselves. And look, if Spencer Sanders and Jackson Dart both look good, well, that's a good problem to have for Ole Miss. And oh, by the way, Quinshon Judkins is back. That guy's pretty good running the football. Newcomer to watch for Ole Miss, Chris Lowe says it's DC Pete Golding. I mean, all the pieces we could talk about in the transfer portal, but nothing bigger than getting Pete Golding over from Alabama to come run the defense for Ole Miss. And we should see a more aggressive front than we've seen in recent years with the Rebels. So fascinating to see that one play out. And the last team from the SEC West that we'll be keeping an eye on their storyline, it's that offense at Texas A&M. We got Connor Wegman back at quarterback. Anaya Smith decided to come back at wide receiver. Evan Stewart. But Bobby Petrino coming in as one of the better play callers in the business. And Jimbo's going to hand over those play calling duties to Bobby Petrino. What is it going to look like? How will it work? Can Jimbo sit back and let Petrino call the plays, run the offense? It'll be a really fun storyline to keep an eye on there in the spring in College Station. As for newcomer to watch for the Aggies, Chris Lowe says North Carolina DB Tony Grimes, former 5-star recruit, played the past 3 years for the Tar Heels. He's coming in through the transfer portal. And one other name to keep an eye on, this is the guy I've been hyping up, Reuben Owens, true freshman running back coming in. He is a bulldozer. I think he's got a real chance to play as a freshman and make an impact in that Aggie backfield. All right, there you have it. Those are the SEC West teams. We'll do the SEC East here in just a second. Reading Chris Lowe from ESPN, his SEC spring storylines as we head into spring ball for majority of the SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. I want to remind you this episode is presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We just hit the NBA All-Star Week a couple weeks ago, and we're on the back stretch of the NBA season, and this is the perfect time to download the FanDuel app. It is America's #1 sports book because new customers, they get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and three-pointers drained. Whatever you want to bet on with the NBA, college hoops, all of it is up there for you at FanDuel. They even let you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Continue on here, Locked On SEC, and we've been touching on a great piece up with Chris Lowe. I think Harry Lyles also helped contribute to the piece, but previewing some of the SEC, the biggest storylines around the SEC is most teams are gearing up and heading into spring ball practice. Some have already been in them. Some are getting into it this week. Others here in the next week or so. So continuing on, jumping back into it, we had to flip it over to the SEC East, and we head on down about as east as you can get, and then south a little bit as we head over to talk about the Florida Gators and Billy Napier heading into year 2. And according to Chris Lowe, top storyline for the Gators, finding fresh faces on that offensive line. You lose 4 starters, including Osiris Torrance. They hit the transfer portal. They acquired tackles Damian George from Alabama, Keontae Goodwin from Kentucky, Micah Mazuka from Baylor. You'll see a new look O-line for the Gators. Should feel confident in the abilities of offensive coordinator Rob Sale, O-line coach Darnell Stapleton. See if they can get this thing back on track. Some great running backs. ATN, obviously fantastic. And what's that new quarterback going to look like? By the way, we talk about Florida newcomer to watch. Chris Lowe says it's quarterback Graham Mertz, transferring in from Wisconsin. We expect he will beat out Jack Miller. But what will Graham Mertz look like? Not as talented, not as gifted as Anthony Richardson, but can he be more of a game manager and make the short, simple, easy throws and keep drives alive? He can only do that with a good offensive line. So going to be keeping an eye on that Florida O-line, how they develop. How about the national champs, the Georgia Bulldogs? Top storyline for them, it's replacing Stetson Bennett. Of course, the back-to-back national championship winner navigated that offense oh so smoothly. And now it's between redshirt junior Carson Beck and redshirt sophomore Brock Vandergriff. They appear to be the two competing for the job. Of course, Todd Monken is gone, but Mike Bobo steps back in, plenty of experience calling plays, and was Georgia's OC back from 2007 to 2014, was an offensive analyst for the Bulldogs last year. So we'll see if he keeps much of the playbook the same from what Todd Monken was running. But Carson Beck versus Brock Vandergriff, just like at Bama, quarterback battle is one to watch. Newcomer to watch, how can you not go with the 2 receivers coming in from Mississippi State and Missouri, respectively? Rara Thomas and Dominic Lovett. It'll be fascinating to see what they do with whoever's throwing them the football. Georgia going to have a lot more receiving yards at that receiver spot this year, it feels like. But look, they still got to find Brock Bowers and throw him a ton of balls because he is a freak. Running through the SEC East, we head on over to Kentucky, where Mark Stoops is facing some good problems. You know, new quarterback in Devin Leary coming in. And by the way, that's Chris Lowe's newcomer to watch. Devin Leary transferring in from NC State. Season was cut short due to an injury. Had a monster 2021. But top storyline for Chris Lowe, who stands out in the running game? Kentucky's always run the ball pretty well in this Mark Stoops era. They had Chris Rodriguez, Lynn Bowden, Benny Snell, Boom Williams. This spring, we will see Rodriguez's backup from the last couple of years, Juton McClain, going to get a lot of reps. He had 18 receptions out of the backfield in 2022. But Ray Davis, transferring in from Vanderbilt. Davis was one of just 4 SEC rushers to break the 1,000-yard rush mark a year ago. So good competition there, but we'll see who stands out and who maybe grabs that starting running back role for Kentucky coming out of the spring. Head on over to Missouri, where Eli Drinkwitz and his team, man, they've been practicing a couple weeks now. Top storyline there, possible emergence of quarterback Jake Garcia. Of course, a lot of these storylines for a lot of these teams comes down to the quarterback, but the Miami transfer is the only healthy, truly healthy quarterback for the Tigers right now. Brady Cook still recovering from surgery on a torn labrum. Sam Horn, of course, pitched on the baseball team and strained that forearm a couple weeks ago. Should be back throwing at some point, but for now, Jake Garcia gets to showcase what he can do and, prove that he deserves an opportunity moving forward. Newcomer to watch for Missouri, Chris Lowe says it's the offense coordinator, Kirby Moore, coming in from Fresno State, led the Bulldogs to the top offense in the Mountain West a year ago, averaging over 400 yards and 30 points a game. Missouri's offense really struggled last year, was ranked 88th in the country. Defense played well at times, but the offense struggled to find consistency. Jake Garcia going to have a chance here to show what he can do with Brady Cook out. Over in Columbia, we check in on Shane Beamer's crew as their top storyline, according to Chris Lowe, it's the team's depth at edge rusher, defensive end, and depth. They lose Jordan Birch and Gilbert Edmond to the transfer portal, and now they're going to look to the likes of Terrell Dawkins, Tyreek Johnson, Jordan Strand, Brian Thomas. Strand missed most of last season with a torn ACL, and we'll see. We'll see who steps up for South Carolina, but they've got to get somebody who can rack up some sacks, some kind of edge rusher. Newcomer to watch, it's Nicholas Harbor, big-time recruit, 39th in ESPN's 300 high school rankings. Chris Lowe says, not a stretch to say Harbor might be the best incoming athlete in all of college football, with a frame that has many expecting him to play either edge or tight end. Incredible speed. Nicholas Harbor, definitely a name to know watching South Carolina heading into next season. Over at Tennessee on a Rocky Top, their top storyline, again, comes back to quarterback Joe Milton coming into his third season with Tennessee, 6th year in college football, and looked very good in the Orange Bowl. Incoming freshman Nico Iamaleava is coming with plenty of hype with top quarterback recruits, but it's expected Joe Milton will stave him off, and Joe Milton will be the quarterback to replace Hendon Hooker this year on Rocky Top. Newcomer to watch for the Vols. Chris Lowe says it's offensive coordinator Joey Halsley. He said he should theoretically provide a seamless transition with Alex Golish leaving, heading off to USF, but Halsey worked with Heupel for years now, and he's developed him as a coach, so offense should be very good with those two working hand in hand. And lastly, we check in on the Vanderbilt Commodores. What's their top storyline? Well, Chris Lowe says, will we see the necessary improvements to get Vandy back to bowl eligibility? Pretty interesting. Defensive back Jalen Mahoney saying earlier this week, the first spring practice this year, he compared it to last year. He said, we've improved a lot year over year. It's a lot faster, a faster pace at practice. We know what's going on as players. We're not just on the field confused and stuff like that. If they continue to improve the pace, Vanderbilt will improve their win total. And they won't be that easy, penciling in a W on the schedule. A newcomer to watch, Chris Lowe says, cornerback Martell Height, Commodore's highest-ranked recruit in the ESPN rankings, listed as the 25th best player from the state of Georgia. See what he does there at defensive back for Vandy. And there you have it. That is Chris Lowe's top storylines to keep an eye on from his ESPN article. And encourage you guys to go read it and read the entire thing. We just kind of skimmed through some of the bullets there, but really, really good stuff. All right, coming up next, we're going to go around the conference. Got some tidbits to hit on. That's coming your way next. All right, roll along here at Locked On SEC. We got some other nuggets to touch on football-wise, so let's do it. Let's dive into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we head on over to Arkansas as Jaheim Singletary, former five-star cornerback from Georgia's elite 2022 recruiting class, played in 3 games for Georgia last year. Tuesday, Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman announced that Jaheim Singletary has signed on with the Razorbacks. Like I said, former 5-star prospect, number 5 overall corner. Razorbacks pass defense was one of the worst in the country last year. And Singletary can come in and lock down one of those DB spots. Going to be a big help and improvement for the Hogs heading into next year. So shout out to Arkansas picking up Jaheim Singletary from Georgia. Over in Tuscaloosa, Alabama has finalized their dates for spring ball. They will begin their spring practice on March 20th, and the annual A-Day spring game will take place Saturday, April 22nd. Of course, we'll get our first chance to watch this quarterback battle between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, and we'll get our first chance to see some of the big-time freshmen in this class, including five-star safety Caleb Downs, five-star running back Justice Haynes, and Eli Holstein, the four-star quarterback coming in there. Again, mark your calendars, A-Day, 2 p.m. Central on April 22nd. Over to LSU, Brian Kelly giving an update on LSU wide receiver Malik Neighbors was arrested a couple weeks ago for illegally carrying a weapon down in New Orleans at Mardi Gras. Kelly affirmed to reporters there was internal discipline for Malik Neighbors, but he will not miss any game time for LSU. So that's good news for them. He had a really nice sophomore season last year with 72 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Outshined Kayshon Boutte, who was supposed to be the go-to guy for LSU last year. So Malik Neighbors, look, LSU opens with Florida State out there in Orlando. They could not afford Malik Neighbors to miss that game. So according to Brian Kelly, he will not. Over at Florida, they are expected to lose analyst Jamar Chaney. He is rumored to be named the next outside linebackers coach at Western Kentucky. Chaney coached and played at Mississippi State before he joined the Florida coaching staff in 2021. His official title was defensive analyst at Florida. Over at Mississippi State, he was the Bulldogs' senior defensive analyst. Played middle linebacker for Mississippi State, so he is on out of leaving the SEC. Some good news for Lane Kiffin's bunch over at Ole Miss. The Rebels added a prospect to their 2024 recruiting class. 3-star linebacker Fred Clark committed to the Rebels this week. 6'2", 230 pounds, ranked the number 78th linebacker in the country. Also ranked as the number 26 prospect out of the state of Mississippi. Timing's very good for the Rebels. They just lost a commitment from linebacker Jordan Lockhart. So now they pick up Fred Clark to come play linebacker for them in next year's class. Also, report Ole Miss closing in on their vacant special teams coordinator role. Arkansas State's Jake Schoonover is coming over. He will replace Marty Biaggi, who is heading to Notre Dame. Schoonover spent one season at Arkansas State as their special teams coordinator, was at Kansas prior to that. And an SEC basketball nugget. Of course, SEC tournaments going on. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's show. But, of course, Kermit Davis was fired a couple weeks ago at Ole Miss. The leading candidate right now, former Texas head coach, Chris Beard, who's fired from the Longhorns during the regular season, was alleged in a domestic assault case. According to Pete Thamel, Ole Miss and Chris Beard have spoken and are in the process of doing the due diligence to potentially hire him. Charges towards Chris Beard were dropped, but Texas still chose to fire him after just 1.5 seasons there in Austin. Of course, had great success at Texas Tech, where he took them to the Elite Eight and to the national title game in 2019. Be a big-time hire for the Rebels if they're able to land Chris Beard. And one more nugget, Will Wade, the former LSU head coach, he is being rumored to be in the mix for the head coach job at McNeese State. So Will Wade would head back to the state of Louisiana, just on the western side of things. Will Wade, of course, was LSU's coach 2017 and 2022, was fired by LSU for cause amid an NCAA investigation. And there you have it. That is the latest news going on around the conference. Appreciate you guys for listening, and thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Make sure you go check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college hoops all in one place. Hear from some big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Of course, with the tournament coming up and all the bracket stuff happening this weekend, you want to make sure you are tuned in to Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC, or thanks to the article from Chris Lowe from ESPN. Again, encourage all you guys to go check that out and read it. Really good stuff from him and Harry Lyles. And that is going to do it. That's it for today's Locked On SEC. Talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.